Hi everyone, welcome to the Redesigning School Counseling webinar for school teams. And the focus of this webinar is goals. My name is Sue Reynolds and I'm president of the American Student Achievement Institute. So first of all, we'd like to start out with a congratulations to everyone. We've checked and every single one of the schools that are working with RSC did receive the Lilly planning grant. So we're just really tickled that you all now have funding to support the activities that you're doing with RSC, the meetings with your council, the exploration and later of exemplary programs and activities. So we're just really pleased with that. Before we go farther, we just really want to make sure that the audio is working. So I'm going to unmute one person and just to make sure that you can hear me and you can see everything. And I think Beth Garrison, I see you've called in on your phone. So I'm just going to unmute you. Beth, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. And are you seeing a screen that says congratulations?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Okay, very good. So I'll mute you again. We are going to leave everybody on mute because we have a very large group participating. Remember, if you'd like to ask a question or you have a comment, which we really encourage you to do, just go ahead and type that into the chat box, and our staff will be answering questions as we go, and I'll pause periodically for them to share questions with me so that we can make sure that you all are hearing the questions and the responses. So again, congratulations to everyone. Just really excited that you now have funding to support your planning process. So that's really cool. Okay. And also just wanted to give everybody a pat on the back. I just checked before we logged into the webinar, and we have now surveyed over 25,000 students. So y'all have been really busy. We know that that took a lot of coordination and organization on your part to get all of your kids to the computer so they could survey, and just hats off to you. We realize that you're in the middle of a full-time job as you're doing redesigning school counseling. Sometimes we like to think of it as trying to change the headlight on a speeding locomotive as it's going down the track. It's just, you know, to do anything with change in the middle of implementing the program that you're already doing, that really takes a commitment. So the fact that you got, you know, 25,000 students to the computers to take the survey was just phenomenal. I've been peeking at your survey data, and it is really exciting. I think you're going to find tons of stories in it about your kids and about the programming that they need from you. Okay, so here's our agenda for today for this webinar, and we have a very full agenda. We'll do some quick updates. We'll do a quick look back to what you did in January and what's coming up, and then the meat of this hour together is going to be on setting you up for your first discussion face-to-face with your school counseling council. So we hope that by the end of today that all of your questions are answered, and that you really have a good sense and you're feeling confident about going into that first meeting. So we'll overview goals. We'll talk about a memo that you're going to send to your council members prior to the meeting. We'll walk through the meeting, and then we'll introduce the online system and the tools that are now available to you to help you facilitate your meeting. We'll end up with just a couple of comments about the meeting that we had with your districts last week, and then end with a couple of tips. So, okay. Excuse me. I am getting over a cold, so please excuse me if I cough a little bit during this. Okay, so let's look at updates. First of all, I'm really pleased to share with you that as of this morning, we now have another strategic planning specialist on board, specifically to help us with the Redesigning School Counseling Initiative. So our new staff member is Janet Page. Janet is she's very familiar with everything that we've done with ACEs. She's not a stranger. She's no stranger to our work. She has been involved in our School Improvement Institute and our AAE initiative to increase APIB and dual credit enrollment success while she was principal at Lanesville High School. And more recently, she just retired as the principal at New Albany High School a few weeks ago. And while she was at New Albany, their school did redesign school counseling. So she's very familiar with the council. She's shared with me this morning how the whole process went at New Albany in some detail, and I'm just really, really pleased to have her on board. For those of you who maybe have been involved in some statewide discussions, New Albany High School is really looked at as a school that's on the move. They've had great gains in student achievement under Janet's leadership, so we're really glad to have her join Debbie. We've got two now very competent and I think very caring support specialists. So Janet, Janet's on this call as well, and this morning we practiced turning her camera on so you could actually see her as she speaks. So Janet, you want to just real quickly introduce yourself? Hopefully we'll get the technology. Right. There we go. We can hear you.
I'm in the lower left corner, and can you hear me, Sue?
We can hear you, yes.
Very good. I will just echo what Sue said. I'm very familiar with the process used by ASA, and I can tell you that where you are today and where you want to be at the end of this process, if we all do the things that are proven that ASA has laid out for us, we can get where we need to be, and I did that consistently for 5 years at Lanesville. So I know sometimes the work feels daunting and it feels heavy, but that's why you have me and that's why you have Debbie to lighten that load whenever it feels like it's a little bit too much, and you pick up the phone and you call, you send a quick email, and we're online, and we're eager and anxious to help because we know that you can be successful using ASA's process. And I'll turn it back over to Sue.
Okay.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
That sounds great. We're really excited to have Janet. Now, that means that some of you will be working with Janet now as your support specialist, and others of you will be working with Debbie. So if you are all of the 2016 schools which are not participating in this webinar will continue to work with Debbie. They've worked with Debbie for months. If you are one of our schools that started in January and you're part of the 2017 cohort, as promised, we've now split you between our support specialists. And on your login page, right in the middle of the page, it'll tell you who your support specialist is. So your support specialist is Janet, or this will say Debbie. When you call the office, the number that you call into is our general number, and they'll transfer you to your right person. If you forget who it is, just when we answer the phone, say, I'd like to speak to my support specialist, and we'll get you to the right person. Excuse me. Okay, so that's Janet. Really excited about that. Also wanted to give you a heads up that our submission icons are all live now. We've actually, some of you have already discovered that, even though we haven't told you, and we've been madly reviewing submissions that when you've clicked that button, they've come to us. So a couple of things. First of all, please do not click these buttons until you're actually ready for us to review your work. And before you click the button, make sure you've read the rubric items so you know what we're looking for, because if one of the rubric items is missed, we're just going to send that submission right back to you and ask you to revise it. So when you're ready to submit something, you just hit the submit button. As soon as you do that, the status in this column will say submitted, and then when Janet and Debbie have reviewed it, this will say either meets criteria, or if there's something we need you to do so you meet the rubric items, it'll say needs revision. Or the other thing it could say is meets criteria, see comments. And that means that technically it met the criteria, but we have a suggestion for you. So if you click the status, a comment box opens up, and you'll be able to see Debbie's comments or Janet's comments. Okay, so that's how to submit work, and really as soon as this webinar is over, you can just go through and everything that's finished, like all these things out here that you've checked off as being finished, you can now just one after another submit them and get them all to us. Now, when you hit that submit button, that starts the clock rolling for us, so that gives us 48 hours to respond to your submission and get it reviewed and get the status on your system. and make comments. However, please keep in mind that right now, you all today will be submitting things at the same time, and so there may be a little bit of a backlog in the next couple of days as we're scrambling to get ready. We're actually bringing on some extra help in addition to Janet and Debbie, so we can make sure that we're getting those responses back to you right away. But in a normal submission, 48 hours should do it. You should have those comments right away. Okay, so also want to give you a heads up. You've been working on your counselor time task logs, and again, wonderful that you're collecting that data. What we've discovered is that we're going to need to tally that data before our tech people were scheduled to be finished with the electronic time task tool. So what we've created that will be available to you the day after tomorrow on Thursday, what we've created is a tally tool. And again, that is the one thing that's not live yet, but it will be live in a couple of days. And here's how it will work. So when you click on the icon for the time use tally tool, this page will come up. You'll add your counselors one at a time so you can have all counselors in the building. And then there will be a step where you're prompted for each counselor. So let's say Amy is one of your counselors. You would put in what are the contract hours for that counselor. So it may be half-time or 40 hours a week or whatever. And please don't write like 36 hours, 20 minutes. We need this to be a decimal. Then we not want to know on paper what is the full-time equivalency. So is this a full-time counselor, a half-time counselor, 3/4 times, whatever. And then on this box, we're asking you to put in, are you counting the number of hours for the week or the number of boxes for the week? So the other choice is going to be the boxes. If you were using our paper time task log, you will be counting up the number of boxes on that piece of paper. If you're using our spreadsheet time use log, you'll be adding up, that tallies up the number of hours. So we just need to let you know for each counselor, did they use the paper one and we're tallying boxes, or did they use the Excel spreadsheet time task log, and so we're adding up actually hours. And then for each week, you're just going to tally up how many boxes or how many hours that counselor spent in the different types of activities, and then save. So so it's just really a matter of transferring the data from the 5 or 6 paper documents or Excel spreadsheet documents that you have for each counselor into the system this way. And then the beauty of it is it's going to save you a ton of time, because then the system will create a report that automatically calculates the adjusted FTE. So, this may be a full-time counselor, but the system will tell you that this counselor only spent 0.72 or 72% of their time in school counseling activities. We'll know if each of the counselors worked time over their contract hours, so that's going to be part of our discussion this month, and then what percentage of time they spend in each of the different types of activities. And then the system will also add that up as a department. So we know that some of you differentiate your staffing. My school, we differentiated staffing. So one of our counselors did nothing but social personal counseling. So she didn't have a part of the alphabet or anything. She just did social personal counseling. So all of her time was in counseling, no guidance, no management. She just did personal social, where others of us did less counseling and spent more of our time in guidance. But for the whole department, when we added everybody together, we got the time percentages for the department. So, okay, so just wanted to give you a heads up on how that report's going to work. And I'll show you when we get to the online system where that is, and then you'll be able to open it and use it in, we hope, on Thursday. And maybe tomorrow. We're just really close to finishing that. Okay, another thing that's come to our attention is some of you have contracted with more than one technical assistance provider to provide the same thing. So if you, in your contracts with your planning funding with Lilly, if you've contracted with us to help you with your program design planning, and you've contracted with another provider to do that. Right now what's happening is that provider is saying, okay, let's set up an organizational structure, and we're saying to you, you already have an organizational structure. They're saying, let's collect this data, and you've already been collecting data for us. So it can get really, really confusing. So we really wanted you to think about, if you have contracted with two technical service providers, in both of whom are supposed to be helping you with planning, you really need to coordinate that. And in some cases, you might want to, decide to go with one provider or the other. If you are going to work with two providers that are both working with planning, then we want to make sure that the other provider knows what you'll be doing with RSC, so they don't overlap and duplicate the work that you're doing with RSC. Then also, finally, this is really important, on the RSC Uses page, we put a question on here. I think we talked about this last month, but we're asking you to tell us which other providers have you contracted with. And what we'll do is we'll send the lead people in these other organizations an email. We'll say, here's a list of schools that we're working with that you are also working with according to the schools, and we'd love to coordinate our services with you, and we'll just kind of open up that discussion. As long as it's not hugely time-consuming, time-consuming for us, we love coordinating, and these organizations we have a lot of respect for. So I think we can kind of join forces, and each of us help you in different ways without overlapping services. But we need you to let us know who you're working with. So as soon as this webinar is finished, please go to that uses page and update that question. And if you're watching an archive of this webinar, I just pause the computer right now and go do that. So, okay, so that's kind of the updates. In looking back, January activities, we got organized in January, and most of our schools did a great job. You've surveyed, you got your councils recruited. I mean, everything's just going smoothly. Some of you are getting a late start, and we know that right now you're feeling really overwhelmed. So if you didn't hit the ground running on January 3rd, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I haven't finished my January activities yet, now we're starting February. So not to worry. If that's happened, we would suggest that if you have not started surveying yet, that you look at not surveying the whole school. The data will not be as reliable for you. We actually don't like that situation, but we also don't want you to get too far behind. So 30 randomly selected students per grade level would be fine. If you have to, 30 in the entire school would be okay. You just aren't going to get a lot of disaggregation doing that. Feel free to call Janet and Debbie and to just say, I'm so far behind, I can't meet your deadlines, and then to set up with us an alternative timeline. We can do that. Don't forget to delegate tasks, and don't forget to just brainstorm with us. Call Debbie, call Janet, call me, and we'll talk about how to get you caught up. So we know that there are a handful of schools who haven't even started surveying yet, but it's not a lost cause. So just talk with us, and we've done this for 20 years. We're used to some schools getting a slow start, and we'll work with you on that. So, okay, looking forward, this coming month in February, we're going to be talking about goals, and then March, we're looking at root causes. April, we're looking at determining what activities you're going to implement, and then getting ready to implement those activities. So those are the steps that are coming up. We want to be finished with all this by May 9th. That'll give your districts 10 days to write grants, probably the Lilly implementation grant. So, okay, so now let's talk about goals. Excuse me. Okay, first of all, let's just do a quick overview so we're all on the same page. Remember this school counseling impact pyramid. Remember how we said that when we are designing your school counseling program, we're going to start by looking at your school's achievement goals. So this month, the first thing we're going to do with your council is we're going to send them the achievement goals out of your school improvement plan. And we're going to say, okay, this is our beginning. This is kind of where we're headed, is to reach these goals in our school improvement plan. Then we're going to say to your council, what are the choices that all kids need to make in order for them to be successful and in order for us to reach our academic goals? So we'll brainstorm all these different choices. And then down the road, we're going to design a school counseling program that will help kids make those choices. Now, I really want to emphasize that it's so important that this month that your focus is on student choices. For us, student choices are goals. So when we talk about student choices that you're incorporating into your program, those are your goals. Any choice you say kids should make, it's a goal of your program to help kids make that choice. We'll talk in the tips section. I'll give you a heads up on how many choices we think a typical elementary student makes and middle school student, but there's a lot of them. Remember, we're not going to tackle all of them at once. We're going to come up with a set of priority goals that are the goals that we want to focus on first. But we want to get that list of all the choices that we want kids to make out on the table so that nothing gets overlooked. So big thing, big concept for this month is student choices are goals. Anytime we say we want kids to make this choice, or to have this behavior or this mindset, those choices, those then become the goals of our program. Okay, so here's how we express goals. When we're talking about goals, we always express goals this way. We say our goal is to increase the percentage of, and then what comes next is going to be a student group. So to increase the percentage of all students, to increase the percentage of 8th graders, to increase the percentage of boys, some kind of student group. And then we're going to say who, and then the benchmark comes. So to increase the percentage of all students who, and then the choice that we want kids to make. Choose to report bullying when observed. Choose to take a career interest inventory. Choose to talk to their parents about school. Choose to create a high school course plan. You have already collected baseline data for all of the key choices through the survey. So right now you have baseline data for all of the choices that we're going to suggest to you. And then later, a year from now, we'll collect follow-up data, and we'll have target data that where we want to reach a year from now. So, so it might be that one of our goals is to increase the percentage of all students who report bullying when observed. Our baseline data is 65%, and we want to increase that to 85%. And then the timeline is by the next end of next school year. We're also, when we get to the target step, we're also going to tease that out over 4 years, since the Lilly implementation period is a 4-year implementation. And then one other I just wanted to highlight, our goal is to increase the percentage of all 8th graders who create a high school course plan. And our baseline data is showing right now that no kids have this. And we're thinking, okay, we're going to put a program in place so that every single 8th grader in the building ends up with a high school course plan. So we're going to go from 0 to 100%. That's fine to have that big of a jump, as long as you can conceive, as you're setting that target, some way that you're going to reach all kids. Okay, so that's how we express goals. Now, we have this large number of program goals. A subset of the goals will become your priority goals. So, and we're also going to talk about that this month. With your priority goals, we're saying these goals are so important, and we're so upset that not many kids are making that choice right now, that we're going to implement extra activities next year and in the next 4 years to help kids make that specific choice. And we're going to monitor data for these few priority goals so that we can see if all the activities that we put in are making a difference. So if one of the priority goals was to help kids to increase the percentage of students who have a 4-year high school course plan, then we'd have that baseline data, and then we'd be monitoring data each year to see if our activities were making a difference. So that's what priority goals are. People always ask me, how many priority goals should we have? If you had no additional funding, we would say, because you're already implementing a program, we would say maybe one priority goal, maybe two, maybe three, maybe not more than three. In my own school, we had a really committed group of counselors. We did 7, but that really stretched us. Each year we would tackle 7 new priority goals. So 1, 2, or 3 is fine with me. Now, with the Lilly implementation grant or whatever other funding you're able to engage in, you're going to be able to buy time with that money. Time for planning, time for program development, time for evaluation, time for training counselors and teachers how to implement the programs that you're putting in place. So we think that with this funding from Lilly, or if you shop it around to other funders, that it's reasonable to tackle 10, 12 priority goals per grade level each year. So if, with this funding, when we're really looking at how do we engage others in working with us to implement programming, you can really go big with that. That's why I love what we're doing with you all, and why I love this Lilly funding, because it's going to allow us to buy time for program development, curriculum development, training teachers to do a teacher advisor program, or wherever you go with this stuff. So, okay. So your council is going to have 3 discussions, and I'm getting ready to take questions. So, if you need to type one in, do so, please. Your council is going to be engaged this month in 1 meeting, but 3 discussions during that 1 meeting. So the first discussion is, what choices should all students make ideally in order for our school to reach our academic goals? And then the second question is, given our limits of time and funding and energy, which program goals should be tackled first, because not enough students are making those choices. So at that point, we're going to look at that survey data. There will be data that upsets people, and you'll really want to dig in and hit some of those goals, first. And then the last question will be kind of an informal discussion. As the council looks into the drill down reports, we're going to ask them to just kind of share with us if they noticed any student groups, or share with you if they've noticed any student groups where a group of students are making sound choices at a lesser rate than their peers. In most schools, that will end up being free and reduced lunch students. In some cases, it's boys, especially in the elementary schools. So there probably will be guidance gaps, and as we look at those drill down reports, you'll find them. When we find a guidance gap, we're not going to single out the entire student group and say, okay, if you're Hispanic, you have to participate in this program. What we'll do is, as we're presenting a program for all students, a curriculum in the classroom or whatever, we'll do it in a way that engages your targeted group at a different level. So if I'm bringing a speaker in, if I'm seeing a guidance gap with my Hispanic and non-Hispanic students, if I'm bringing speakers in, I might want to make sure that my speakers are Hispanic so that the speakers are going to engage with the Hispanic kids. Or if I see, another thing I could do is make sure that all my print materials are in Spanish as well as English if I'm starting to see a guidance gap with Hispanic versus non-Hispanic. So yeah, so things to think about there. Okay. I'm going to pause, and Debbie, if you want to jump in, and we discovered Debbie can turn on her camera too, so if you want to jump in, and let's see what questions we have.
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
Okay, so first question, we're going to look at the time task log questions.
Okay.
How many weeks time use logs do we need to keep track of?
Okay, so there needs to be, I'm going to answer that question 2 ways. One of the things you're doing with the time task log is you're proving that you can schedule time. And the rubric item that we have to meet for that is to see a time task log from first semester and one from second semester. So 1 week from first semester, 1 week from second semester for each of your counselors. So if you have 4 counselors, that would be a total of 8 logs, 1 from each semester. If you have already started second semester. We're just going to fudge on that a little bit. We'd like you to, for your first semester one, just use the very first one you have, that first week in January when you did this. We'll count that as your first semester log. Now, so that's for that purpose. Then the other thing is when you're sharing the time task log data with your council, we want to have as many weeks as possible. Normally, we would have an entire year's worth of time task logs. So, you know, however many weeks that is, 42 weeks or whatever. But in this case, we just want to keep logging your tasks between whenever you first started doing it, so January 3rd, and like the day before your meeting. We want to get in as much time use as possible. And that's because counselors don't do the same thing every day. So, you know, if we just had 1 week's worth of time use logs and, you know, you happen to do a lot of group counseling that week, it would kind of skew your data. So we're needing to get as many logs as we can, as many weeks worth as we can. A very good question. Okay, next.
How are sick days and time off accounted for?
That is a really good question. And you know, there's so many little, as we're designing the online time use logs, there's so many like different scenarios. The way that I would suggest you do it here, and it will work here, is when you're tallying up your total boxes or your total hours, just don't include your sick days or your vacation days or whatever. And that will still give you the percentage because we're entering the total number of boxes or total number of hours. What that could do is, let's say you have a full-time counselor and because of sick days and vacation days, that week they actually were under hours. They didn't get their whole 37.5 hours. But we're not reporting anywhere publicly under hours. We're only looking at over hours. So you'll be okay with that. So just don't include them. Yeah, that'll work. Another great question. Good. Good.
Do we have a tool for figuring FTE?
No. Yes and no. So for straight FTE, no. That would be, you know, when you sign your contract with your school, most school counselors are full-time. So I would just, you know, ask your principal, am I full-time or am I half-time, or how, you know, how am I considered? Your principal will know that. On your adjusted FTE, the system will calculate that for you, so you don't need to worry about your adjusted FTE. And remember, your adjusted FTE is the amount of time that you're employed minus the amount of time that you spend on non-program tasks. So that helps us to understand, you know, if we have a full-time counselor or if we have a, you know, a part-time counselor and a part-time administrative assistant or whatever. So, okay, next.
Okay, and I think the last time counselor or time use log question is someone was a little confused. If they didn't start the process till second semester, how would they get the 2 semesters worth?
Yeah, so again, that's just a very odd scenario this time since we're starting, we, you know, weren't able to start until January and we're finishing up in the same semester. So your very first log that you kept, so January 3rd, you know, that week, I count that as your first semester log. And then the very last one probably would be the best one to use for your second semester log. Yeah, that, and you know, there's nothing we could do about that, so we're gonna be a little flexible on that one.
Okay, and then when we look at target goals, how do we account for the students who are meeting the stated goal but are not actually self-reporting? For instance, they can pull their 4-year plan out of their file, but they say they don't have one.
Yeah.
This will impact which goals we choose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are really good questions. I actually had that same scenario happen in my school. I could open up my file drawer and count, you know, and put my hands on a 4-year high school course plan for all of our students. But we were not calling it a four-year high school course plan. And so when the survey came and, we were asking about four-year high school course plan, the kids said, no, we don't have one. And, they had just spaced out. So a couple things to note on that. One is, if that happens to you, to think about where we went with that is we thought, does it matter if kids don't know that they have a four-year high school course plan? And our counselors, we thought, yeah, that matters, because that means they really don't understand why they're taking these classes, because they're not remembering that they're hooked to their career plans and their post-secondary education plan, and that's why we picked these classes. So we went on a big campaign to help the kids, remember that they had a four-year high school course plan. The other thing is that we changed our terminology so that it matched the survey. And, I don't know how you feel about that. The other thing you could do is tell students when it says, four-year high school course plan, in-house we call that a career plan, or we call that an Indiana graduation plan, or whatever. But the terminology, if you can start using the terminology in the survey, that would be helpful. Now, the other thing, and I want to say this very strongly, we never want you to use data that you don't believe in. So this may be that you need to explain to your counsel, if that comes up, that that data is, you don't feel that data is reliable, because you can put your hands on those for your high school course plans, and just disregard that data. When we get to targets in the online system, we're going to give you an opportunity to say, I don't want to use survey data for my baseline data. I want to count something else. In your case, what I would suggest is you count how many folders you have in your desk, and use that as your data. Anytime that you can actually count something rather than a student self-report, it's going to be more reliable data anyway. It's just harder to collect. So yeah, really, really good question. But again, the thing I want everybody to hear is anytime that there's data that you don't believe in our system, you should disregard it if you don't think it's reliable data for whatever reason. One other thing with that is you will all, as you look at your data, we all know that some kids, probably just went down that survey and answered B to everything. So there will be a certain percentage of students who just kind of blew off every question. That really doesn't matter, because you're looking at aggregated data. And if you see, question after question, 90% of the kids are saying we made this choice, and then all of a sudden there's a question and only 25% said they made that choice, then the light bulb goes off. Ooh, what was that question? So, if we had a handful of students, I think the research shows it's usually about 7% of the kids will blow off the surveys. If that's the case, you're still going to be okay, because you're looking at aggregated data.
Okay, last question. Should we include students on our advisory council roster? Are we allowed to share their email addresses? It will not be submitted without their email address input.
Yeah, that's we've had that question come up as a really good question, and I respect your attention to confidentiality with that. It's okay with us if you don't want to put in a student's email address. We've also had some schools that are entering the school's phone number for their students. So the only downside of that is it makes you unable to use our tool to communicate with your entire council all at once. But you'll just need to remember to type in the kids' email addresses. So yeah, whatever you feel comfortable with on that one is fine with us. Okay.
Just one that popped up. Is there any way to export student reports to an Excel file?
No, there's not. The survey, as you can imagine, with all the disaggregation that's in there, it is mammothly confusing, and so there's no way to download the survey data itself. The communication data can be downloaded into an Excel spreadsheet, so that you can do mailing labels or mass emails or whatever. But the actual all that data, I mean, there's probably for every one of your schools, there's probably, you know, hundreds of thousands of data points in there with all the disaggregation that's available. So, okay, I'm going to move on. Now, we're going to talk about the meeting. I'm going to go pretty fast, and we may go over a few minutes. And again, I apologize, but I just want to make sure that you've got everything that you need. So first of all, about a week before your meeting, and I know some of you are meeting next week, so it's going to be like right now for you, we need to send a memo to your council members. And here's what the memo looks like. So you can send this out as an email attachment, or just paste it into the body of the email. And what this does is it asks your council members to watch a video. This is a video that lasts, I think it's 40 minutes. It introduces all of RSC, so you won't have to do that at your meeting. And it introduces goals, and you know, like how we refer to goals and everything that I just kind of went over with you. So we want council members to know what they're doing before they get to your meeting, so we can spend your entire meeting talking with them, having discussions, and not presenting to them. So the presentation part is going to happen beforehand. So they'll watch this video. Then you will also attach your school's academic goals to the email, and you're going to ask the email, ask the council members to review the school's academic goals, so we kind of know where we're headed. And then we're saying to them, please click this link to open up our school's data, and it gives them instructions for how to get to your school's data. And then it says print the report, star choices that you do not believe all students should make at some point while enrolled in your school in order to raise student achievement. So it's not uncommon for people to not make any stars, that all the choices that are in the system are kind of standard choices that successful students make, and they may not want to exclude anything. That happens actually quite often. But there may be some things that they say, you know, this isn't really appropriate at our school for our kids, let's take this one out, or we don't like the way this one's worded, you know, it's okay, but we want to tweak the wording a little bit. So that's one task. And then the other thing we're doing is asking them, look at the data, and if there's anything that concerns you because too few students are making sound choices in that area, circle that data. So they're going to come to your meeting having already reviewed all the data and having notes on their paper sheets about things that they want to leave out of your goals, and data that concern them. We're having them look at the grade level drill down report, because if there's some data like, have you completed a FAFSA, and it may be okay with them that the the freshmen or the juniors haven't, but the seniors have, or explored merit-based scholarships, or things like that. Okay, so that's step one. And then step two, this will be pretty quick. We're saying, please open up one of the drill down reports. It doesn't matter which one. If I'm a Hispanic parent, I might want to look at the gender ethnicity drill down. If I'm somebody in your community that works with low-income folks from an agency, I might want to look at what are the free and reduced lunch students saying. So everybody's kind of going in wherever their interest takes them. They're opening up one drill down report, and they're just looking through to see, are we finding guidance gaps? Are we finding groups of students who do not make choices at the same rate as their peers? So that's the pre-meeting activity. I think it'll take your council members about a couple hours even to do that pre-meeting activity. In the cover letter, there's some verbiage above these tasks, but we explain that this is the time commitment that we think it's going to take, and then we also explain that once they get into that data, usually people will want to spend more than 2 hours because that data is so compelling. And then they'll also realize that they can help kids in your community, and they want to be at the table. So once we get them going, I think that time commitment is going to be something that they find worthwhile. Okay, so that's the memo. Okay, so now let's go to the meeting walkthrough. Now, let me tell you, I did something that we've not done before to save you a bunch of time. Here is the meeting PowerPoint. And I'm going to walk through this with you. We're going to go pretty fast. And, whoops, slideshow. Okay. So here is the discussion prompt. So now you're face-to-face with people. And the first thing we're doing is saying, okay, we're at the council, and we'd like to I think I skipped a slide. Just a sec, sorry. School of Counseling Council. Oh, no, I'll fix this. There's a typo on it. So the first thing we're doing is we're saying, okay, we have a school counseling steering team, and then you're going to hit it, then you're going to have everybody introduce themselves. Now, the thing that I did is I also were providing for you a video of all these prompts. So instead of actually facilitating the meeting and having to prep for that, you could just bring in the video, pop the video in, bring it up online and show it. And it will be me talking to your council. And at this point, I'll say, okay, as we're talking with, oh, I know, I remember why I put that in there, sorry. So we're saying, the first thing I'm going to do is, if it's me talking to them, is I'm going to say, thank you very much for participating in your council. And as you're watching this video, there's going to be times when this pause button comes up. And when it comes up, what you need to do is pause the video and have a discussion that I'll set up for you. So if you don't have time to prep for this meeting, you could just put me in there and I'll facilitate the meeting for you. If you're on the bubble, if you should facilitate or let me facilitate it for you through the video, I would suggest that if you have time, you do it, because we want you to be perceived as the experts about all this in your school. If you don't have the time or you don't feel the confidence in facilitating the meeting, I can sure do that. And you'll see when we get to the discussion, you'll be facilitating that part as well. So, okay, so you have a choice. Either have me do it through the video or you guys do it with the slides yourselves. Okay, so the first thing we're doing is we're having the council members introduce themselves. And everybody introduced. So we're saying, we want the steering team to introduce. I'm not going to go through all of these slides in depth, because if you watch the video with me doing it, if you decide that you want to do it, you can just kind of replicate what I did or tweak what I did, or say, oh, I hated the way Sue did it, and design your own. So also, all of these slides can be edited. So if you don't like a slide, change it. We ask that you keep our copyright on the slides and just say adapted from and then the American Student Achievement Institute. You can toss out slides, you can add slides. These are all just starting spots for you. So in this place, we're introducing the steering team and talking about, the point people that they'll see. Here's where we're introducing, just in case you have people that didn't watch the video, real quickly, what is the council all about? And then each council member introduces themselves. One thing we're trying to really set up on this slide is that later we're going to invite the council members to become partners and to help you implement the program next year and in coming years. So we're just kind of teasing that out right now, that will be coming later. In the council introductions, we're asking them to say who they are, what they do for a living, so they can kind of see each other's perspective. And then we're asking, we know why we invited them to be at the table, but we want to know from their perspective what is unique about them that will give them a different voice than everybody else at the table. So, someone may say, well, I could be the voice of third grade teachers, or third grade parents, or I can be the voice of business and industry in our community, or local government, or wherever. Okay. So then we're introducing today's tasks, and I've already been through these. We're reviewing that they did some homework before they came to the meeting, and just reminding them what they did. Anybody that didn't get that homework done, we're just asking them to kind of listen and then make sure for next time that they get their tasks finished before the meeting. Then we're doing an overview. We're saying we're having 3 discussions. And there we go with introducing program goals. So on this page, I dropped in, this is kind of a mission that is very similar to what most of our RSC schools do. So basically it's our mission to help kids make good choices in areas that impact their success. And then we're trying to establish for them, again, this idea that goals are choices. So each choice that we talk about that we want kids to make, that becomes a goal for our program. We're asking people, are there any additional choices that were not on those sheets? Every year there's a school that points out to me that there's another choice that kids need to make to be successful that I had forgotten or not thought of, and then we add that to our survey. Yeah, so are there any additional ones? Now, this is a tool that you'll use. It's called an Instagraph. This is going to help you come to consensus really quickly with your large council. So basically, this will be a poster. So you've taken this to Kinko's or FedEx or whoever. They've blown it up into a big poster. And each of these posters is customized for your school. I'll show you how to download it in a sec. It only includes the suggested choices for students in the grades that are housed for your school. And what we're doing with folks is we're saying, look at the things that you starred on your paper document. And what we'd like you to do is just come up, and for those that you starred that you don't think need to be goals for us, just put an X or I like to pass out sticky dots because they're colorful. Put a sticky dot in that box. So the first person comes up to the Instagraph and they say, okay, we think that students in our school don't need to plan to continue their education after high school, use the internet, and attend a college fair. So they've put their dots in those three areas. Then they sit down. So the next person who's right behind them ready to go, they put their dots on the Instagraph, but if there's already a dot, they're going to put their dot or their X to the box to the right of that. Then the third person comes up, then the fourth person, then the fifth person. And what we find here is you can see a bar graph is starting to grow. And that gives you just a real visual very quickly that the council as a group did not think that these two especially were choices that your students need to make. And then after the Instagraph is finished, then you can just say, okay, it looks like we have a lot of folks that didn't think that these two were important. Is it okay with everybody if we leave those out then? So, and then you're kind of testing that consensus. And it may be that someone says, no, it's not okay that you leave that out. And then they have a chance to convince these 5 people that they should leave it in. But the thing is, you're not having to discuss 60 different choices. You're only having to discuss the ones that got a lot of votes. So, okay, it makes this discussion go really fast. We're wanting this whole goals discussion to happen in 30 minutes, so you're really going to have to keep it moving. We did not plan a break in the 2-hour meeting with your council because they're going to be up out of their seats a lot doing this Instagraph. And if I need to go to the restroom while everybody's putting their dots up, I can quick head out to the restroom and then come back. Okay, that's discussion 1. It's 30-minute discussion, and you're keeping the meeting going. Every second of this meeting is going to be really important to stay on task. Okay, so now we're talking about priority goals. We're reminding people what priority goals are. And then the question is, again, given the resources available, which program goals should we tackle next year because too few students are making those choices. So now we're saying, look at the data that you circled on your sheets, and we're going to talk about should those be our priority goals. But the key on this, I'm going to go back a slide, is that we can't pick more priority goals than you have the time and the funding to implement. It would be totally unfair to you to have your council pick 40 priority goals when your schedule's already full and we can't figure out any way that we're going to get more resources for you. So first of all, we need to look at what resources are available. So we need to help your council understand how many counselors you have available and what their adjusted FTEs are. So you might say, we have 3 counselors, but one of them spends half of her time doing things that have nothing to do with guidance and counseling, so we really have 2.5 counselors. So if you're doing this and you're facilitating it, you would just type in the numbers there before you present this slide. If I'm facilitating it with the video, I'll say pause this real quickly, and counselors, steering team, please share with your council what those numbers are. and then you can just tell them and discuss it real quickly. And on these, I wouldn't spend more than 30 seconds or a minute on each of these discussions. We're just getting information out there. Also, when you start talking about FTEs, you're going to have probably someone says, what do you mean Jane's only spending 20% of her time on school counseling tasks? What is she doing the other 80% of the time? And you're going to be prepared to pass out, if you need to, a list of all the non-program activities that you do right then. So if that question comes up, you'll be ready to respond to it. Okay, student-counselor ratio is a resource. We'll talk about that. Support staff, do you have a support staff? Counselor time use, that's all the time use log that you've been putting together. This is your department time use, and you'll be explaining how you spread your time and how much time you spend on non-program tasks. You know, that's again where that question may come up. What are you doing in non-program? And then you'll be able to pass that out. Remember, we've defined all of these terms in the video that the council watched before they came to your meeting. Okay, per pupil expenditure, professional development, what you get to do, and then your reputation, we think, is a resource as well. So in the video, I explained that there's a lot of really good counselors that for whatever reason have a poor image. And so we want to know that, because if that's the case, that's something that needs to be corrected. So, you know, we'll share the student survey data about the perception questions with your counsel at this point. And don't be surprised if your students perceive that you don't care about them or that you don't know what you're doing. Even if you do, probably the first thing is to, to think, do I really care about kids? Well, yeah, why would kids say that I don't care about them? And that opens up just a great discussion. You got to remember that if kids don't think you care about them, they're not going to come in to see you. So this resource, your reputation, the perception that people have of you, is really important to look at. If you're uncomfortable with this part, you could, if you're presenting, just leave this slide out. Just don't share that data. Look at it as a counselor, but don't share it. If you're using my my slides, my video, you could just say something like, the counselors haven't had a chance to look at that data yet. We're going to examine it first, and just kind of bypass this. Okay, so now the question is, in order to have a whole lot of priority goals, we need to have a whole lot of time. And we know that funding buys time. So how in the world can we get our counselors more time? And this goes into a little brainstorm. And again, in this segment, we're kind of allowing 30 minutes for this part of the discussion too. So those first few slides need to happen real fast, because this is where we want to spend your discussion time. So how do we expand our resources? Well, one thing you can say is, guess what? We have a funding source available. So our school's planning to apply, our district's planning on applying for the Lilly grant. And guess what? With this money, we can buy time for, we can buy time with our funding grant for program development, to train people on how to do things, to evaluate our programs, for technical assistance, for materials. So if we get this grant, we can buy time, and that would allow us to tackle a whole lot more of the, have a whole lot more priority goals. And if it were me, the other thing I would say is, and if we don't get the grant, we're not going to let that stop us. We're going to go find funding from some other source, from businesses in the community, from another foundation. Once you guys design this program, and you're willing to back it, and it's going to do great things for kids, we're not going to let money stop us. And if we don't get the Lilly grant, then we'll go somewhere else. And then I'd also add, but we've got so much data, we've got a great team here, we really think we're going to get that grant. So let's move forward as though we have this funding, and let's tackle a lot of the priority goals. So the next question is then, how many goals? Again, if you're thinking about, really looking at bringing that funding in and using the funding to bring other folks to the table to help you deliver your program, you could probably do 7, 10, 12 priority goals per grade level per year. So, if you're a 4-year or if you're a 2-year middle school with 7th and 8th grade, you might look at 20, 25 different priority goals. So, okay. So then the question is, once you kind of know that, given the resources available, that we think we're going to have, all this Lilly funding, other people coming to the table to help us implement, which program goals should our school tackle next year, because too few students are making those choices. Now, you'll go back to the Instagraph, and this time people are looking at, what did they circle as being bothersome data, and then they're going to come up and they're going to put their X's or their circles in this next section on the Instagraph. So we start to build, a bar graph over there as well. Okay, so that's how we get through the priority goals. Half-hour discussion, it's got to really keep moving. And then the last one is just a discussion about guidance gaps. We're asking people, as you looked at the data and those drill down reports, did you find any student groups that tend to make sound choices at a lesser rate than their peers? And what data support that statement? And just a note to you for Gold Star and RAMP, at least one of your goals need to be designed to close a guidance gap. So, to increase the percentage of Hispanic students who, or boys who, or free reduced lunch students who, make this choice. Okay, so that's kind of the program. This month with your council, we're looking at program goals, expanding resources. Thank goodness the Lilly grant's in there, and then priority goals. So I'm going to stop. So we're thanking people for coming to the meeting. Okay, so let me grab questions real quick, and then there's a few things to go on the Alliance system and then the wrap. Debbie, questions?
Yes, hello again.
Hello again.
I have a few. The first one from Christy is, what role do you see students playing as part of the council? Do they need to attend each meeting? Just wanted to be respectful of their time and let their parents know what they are signing their kids up for.
Yeah, so we think it's really important to have students there. They, as consumers of what you do, they have the best input. I mean, they will provide great input. In my own school, we found that the kids were a little bit intimidated by the adults. And so what I used to do is I'd pull the kids in during lunch, I'd get a pizza or something, and I'd give the kids a heads up on what we were doing so that that evening, so they could think about, what they wanted to say and what input they would have so that they came in ready to talk. We've had other schools that have done 2 council meetings. They've had a separate meeting where a whole bunch of kids came to the table, and they met with the kids separately, and then they did a separate council meeting for the adults. So that's an option as well. It is, some of these discussions are kind of in depth. If you're in an elementary school, you're probably looking at your upper elementary. Another thing you could do is, you could meet with some of your lower elementary kids yourself, and then just share with the council, what the lower elementary kids felt that, what choices they felt kids needed to make. But yeah, we think that the student voice is really important.
Okay, Lindsay asks, where do we find the school Instagraphs?
Okay, I'm going to show you that in a sec.
And let's see. So do the counselors only need to track their time use through February 3rd? Yeah,
that's up to you. In terms of your documentation, you could stop tracking your time after that point. And again, I mean, we did it. I did it for years every day, just because that's how we scheduled our time. Was we filled out those time task logs ahead of time and then just followed whatever they said. But in terms of your documentation, you won't need to do any documentation as long as you can collect a first semester or an early January time use log and a second semester time use log for each of your counselors.
Okay. And Beth asks, how long do we anticipate each council meeting will last? 2 hours each time, like you indicated for the first meeting?
Yeah, each one will be 2 hours. Now, one of the things you might want to discuss with your council, it's possible, you saw that there were 3 major discussions in this first meeting. Some schools like to divide their meetings into 2 one-hour meetings, and they'll do like goals at one meeting and then priority goals at the next meeting. So you might ask your council at this first meeting, would you rather have 2 one-hour meetings a month or 1 2-hour meeting? 99% of the time they'd rather come once and just bang it out all at once. So, but you could ask. But it's okay with us if you want to, separate those. Yeah. The other ones will also be 2-hour meetings, but it's not going to be quite as packed as this one is. So this one will be the most packed. And that's why I really want to emphasize to, just really watch that clock and make sure you're not spending, an extra 10 minutes doing something that you don't have to.
Okay, 2 more questions.
Okay.
Tanya asks, regarding student groups at the elementary level, the demographic questions were the most difficult for the students to answer. Other than male-female, I'm not confident that the student group percentages will be accurate when needing to discuss guidance gaps with specific guidance groups.
Right. My battery on my phone just told me I was low, and because it's not plugged in. There we go. So yeah, again, if you don't feel the data is reliable, just disregard it. In the memo that you're sending out to your council, you could, in the section where it says to look at the drill down reports, you could say to them, please only look at the gender drill down report, because we don't feel our other drill down was reliable as a student self-report. So yeah, feel free to adjust our memo to direct the council away from data that you don't think is reliable.
Okay, last question from Krista. If there are gaps or blanks in boxes on time logs because things were very busy and the time log was not completed for brief periods during a day, how should this be addressed? Should those boxes not be included in the overall summaries?
Yeah, I mean, you won't be able to include them, and that's a little bit too bad because my guess is that your data is going to be skewed a little bit to include only, things that maybe didn't get recorded when you were a little bit busier than other times. But, it's the best we can do. So, yeah, so just include the boxes that you're able to fill out. Okay, let's move on. I want to look at the online system real quickly. I'm going to go to the Process tab, and just wanted to go over, if I scroll down to, here is Program Goals, Discussion Prep, and then another section we're working in February is Program Goals Discussion. It looks like a lot of steps, but it's really just, a lot of it's just checking stuff. So register, watch a couple of videos, check are all council members entered into the online system. If not, you won't be able to send them that email. Check that is the survey complete. Tally the counselor time use logs. This is what I opened our webinar with. When you click this little icon here, that'll give you the tools to tally. Upload the achievement goals. On this document, this is just a form that if your school improvement plan doesn't have a nice little concise page where the goals, your achievement goals are all listed, this is a form that you could just take the achievement goals out of your school improvement plan and put it into this one-page form. This is an uploader. Whatever you have saved on your computer that shows your achievement goals, you would just click this and then attach that file and upload it to our system. Once you've uploaded it, when you click report, it will open in our system. Enter non-program activities. This shouldn't take too long. I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to hit the enter edit, and I'm going to enter program activities. So I'm hitting the enter. The only activities we're entering right now are non-program activities. So might be daily hall duty, just a little description of that. And then the activity part is activity type is non-program. And notice when I click non-program, everything else is going to disappear. So I'm clicking non-program, so I no longer can connect goals or grade levels or anything to that. When are you doing hall duty? You just click all the months that's available, who's doing it, and you know check a person or someone not listed here and then type them in. So this is then going to print a report that will give you all of your non-program activities, so that when that question comes up, well, what are you doing? You can say, well, funny you asked, here's a list, and then just, you know, pass it out. Okay, here's the report. And then send the pre-meeting memo and the achievement goals. So one of these is the actual memo, and then the other one is the achievement goals. And one other thing, don't forget that in your council section up here, that you know, if we go to the council, where is council? Here's school counseling, council. In here, when I do this enter on the council, here's an email tool, so that this will pull together all the email addresses for your council, so you don't have to look them up or get them together. Okay, so that actually, this prep for the meeting is going to be, you know, pretty quick. You know, it looks like, oh my gosh, 10 steps, but these are really easy. Okay, and then in the program goals discussion, here is the video if you want me to facilitate your meeting. The slides are in the manual. I'll show you that in a sec. This icon will take you to the manual. Then we're entering program goals. I'm going to show you how that works. And I realize we're over. I apologize. When you're entering your program goals, this is kind of nifty. We tried to save you a bunch of time. So I'm going to conduct the meeting. I'm going to add suggested program goals. So when I click here, this brings up goals that we're suggesting to you, and every single one of these goals is aligned with the survey. So any one of these goals that you pick has baseline data associated with it. So you would just say, yeah, in our school, we do want kids to plan to continue their education after high school. And that's really not a goal that we have for all of our kids. It's just our seniors. So I don't know why it would just be seniors, but so you pick the grade level. And you might even say, and actually it's not a goal that we have for all kids. It's only a goal that we have for girls. So you can kind of fine-tune the goal as you enter it in. So you just, you know, pick from our suggested list. Notice that, you know, all of those choices in this, you know, for a high school kid that's going to be successful at school, we're thinking there's 87 choices that they need to make. And then you're just going to add the suggested program goals. So all you have to do is check boxes. You know, think it through and then check boxes. You don't have to type. You don't have to create the goals if you don't want to. Okay, so that's how you get in the suggested program goals. And then if there's other choices, or if you don't like the way we've worded something, you can add program goals that you create, and then you are writing the goals. So to impact the percentage of students who, you know, whatever you want that choice to make, who choose to bring their lunchbox to school every day, or I don't know, whatever, and then what grade level and what student group, and then save, and that would add that in. Okay, so as you add the goals, they will appear down here, and you can edit goals unless it's a suggested program goal. And because there's data associated with that goal, we don't let you edit that question, because we're afraid you'll change the meaning of the item, and then it no longer will make sense with that data. So you can delete a suggested program goal, you just can't edit it. And again, as you're putting these things in, just, you know, ask Debbie and Janet if you have questions. Okay, so that's how you get the goals in. And then on priority goals, that one's really simple. This will give you a list where you're going to open this enter button up, and all of the goals that you've already put in will be here, and you're just going to check the ones that you want to be priority. So really easy to do. It's just a checklist, and you check them off. And then the last thing we need to do is enter priority goal data. And I don't have any goals in, so this is not going to show. But in this section, if there's survey data associated with this goal, the data will appear here. You'll have the option to change that to tell us I don't want to use survey data, and then a text box will appear and you'll tell us what you want to count. And then you'll put in, here's our baseline data of whatever we counted. So we counted how many four-year high school course plan folders we actually have on our desk. We counted, that we have those for 87% of the students, and then there'll be a chance to put in target data here. So this is where we're getting our targets in. You will not do this with the council. You'll do this as a steering team afterwards to put in your data in your targets. For any goal that you create, there will be a text box here that you're going to tell us what you're going to count for your baseline data and your follow-up data. So again, pretty simple. The system does it all for you. If I had in a goal, we'd be able to do that. So, okay. So then, that's priority goals. We haven't talked about minutes yet. The minutes is pretty simple. You just say who's writing the minutes and then just put a summary of your meeting. One of the rubric items is that you mention people who were at the meeting and what they said. That helps to convey to your council members that you're listening. If you start to say, well, Jane added that she thought Jane was concerned about this data, or whatever. If you start to quote people in your minutes and people are reading that, they realize that you were listening and they will come back to the next meeting. So that's really a good little trick to get people back to your next meeting, is to let them know in your minutes that they were heard. Okay, and then your discussion evaluation, please take some time with this. Janet and Debbie will be looking at this heavily. To what degree were people engaged, and what makes you say this? What went well, and should you replicate this in the next discussion? And then may we share this with other schools? We're going to start a database so that in the future schools can get tips from you that this is something that went really well that we're going to replicate. And so there may be 100 of these tips in the future for how to facilitate this meeting. So can we share this with other schools? And then what would you do differently next time? So we'll read this very carefully. This may end up with a follow-up phone call to you to talk about some of it, or feel free to call us if you want to talk about it as well. Okay, so that's the process page, and then very, very quickly, here's the manual. So everything you need to facilitate this meeting is in the manual. So here's discussion 1. Here's your handouts, cover page, an agenda. I do want to show you the agenda real quickly. Let's open that up. And in the agenda, we've told you how much time we think each part of the agenda would take, but we've not put the times out here because we didn't know what time your meeting was going to start. So you would write like 6 p.m. and then that's supposed to take 20 minutes, so at 6:20 I should be here, and then at 6:50 I should be here. So this, that kind of helps you. It also, when you pass this out and people see times on the agenda, if you start to get behind, they'll start like not being as gabby and start to get to the point more quickly when they're talking. Okay, so there's that. And then this is just a process diagram, and then here's the slides if you're going to do the presentation. So council discussion prompt slides, and here is discussion prompt video. This is me doing the facilitation. So either way you can go with that. Okay, and then here's the tools you need. Here's the memo. Here are the slides in the video that the council watched ahead of time. Here's the video of me doing the meeting facilitation. Here's the template for the achievement goals. And you asked about the Instagraph. I'll open this one up. So this is all customized. So here's the one for Boone Grove High School. Here's all the student choices that we suggest for students in their grade levels. These all have data from the survey. And then this is where they would complete their Instagraph. When you're printing this, we suggest you print it in longitudinally, horizontally. And there's also, when you print, you may not get these lines gray every other one. That's a setting that you have to set up in your computer as well. Okay, so that's that, and then back to the manual page. This is just a page on how to calculate FTE and ratios if you want to do that yourself. After you enter your non-program activities, this is a place where you can get that report out. This is what you typed in, and this is where you would get the report from the survey, the perceptions of the school counselor. So everything you need for that meeting is all in one place, and you just take it and go. Again, you have our permission to change anything you want. Just keep our copyright on if you will, and if you've changed it, you can just write adapted from our copyright. Okay, so a couple more things and then we are done, finished. Slideshow, current slide. Okay, just a heads up, when we met with your district last week, we asked them if they are going to have any district-wide goals, which we think will be a good idea for your Lilly grant, to convey those to you before today. So you might want to check with your district people to say, are we having any district-wide goals? Like, are we going to say that all of our middle schools are going to help kids do a four-year high school course plan, or all of our fifth graders across the district are going to work on homework completion, or what it is. So we asked them to convey to you the district level priority goals and anticipated funding for your school. So we asked them to figure out, okay, if there's $100,000 coming to your school, how much is your high school going to get? How much is this elementary going to get of that funding to support their work? So they should be ready to share that information with you. If your district is not involved in our district initiative, I'd sit down and request an appointment and get the answers to those questions, because you need that right now. Tips. Remember, there's likely to be a lot of student choice goals. From our perspective, this is how many choices students make in 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. This is how many survey items there are in those grade levels. So yeah, so there's likely to be a lot of goals, but not so many priority goals. Then last thing, to promote engagement, we really suggest that you call your council members the day before the meeting, or a couple days before their meeting. Remind them about the meeting. Let them know on the phone, voice to voice, how excited you are that they're going to be there. And another little trick that schools have shared with us, if there's going to be a dignitary coming, like maybe your mayor is coming, or somebody from Ivy Tech, or someone that people would be impressed that are coming to your meeting, you might just want to drop that into the conversation. I'm so excited about the meeting. Mayor Daley's going to be here, and it's going to be part of our discussion, and I'm so excited you're going to be here. And just kind of drop that in. Helps get people to the meetings. Offer childcare, offer refreshments, invite the media so you can get some good press on this. Send a thank you after the meeting, and then citing people in your minutes who have said things. So, okay, that's it. And I've noticed that I've gone over again, and I'm just starting to think that it's hard to do these meetings in an hour, so maybe we might want to kind of plan on an hour and a half for our next webinars, so that if I do go over, I'm not butting up against something that, something else that you have planned. So we'll take questions, and then we'll close. Debbie.
Yes, so the only question I have right now is, what category would our webinars fall under in the time use log? And I would say meetings too. Okay,
yeah. So one of the professional development is a management task. So the webinars would fall under management. So you'd code that in as management, any professional development. Same thing in your program design. That's also a management task. So when you're at your meetings, same thing.
That's it.
So Janet, we worked with this morning, and she's ready to hit the ground running. So call her as soon as you have questions. Make sure to look to see which of the support specialists has been assigned to your school. And right now, if you've got an extra minute, please log into the uses page and let us know which other technical assistance providers you're working with, so that we can contact them on your behalf. So, okay, that sounds good. Thank you, everybody. And again, I apologize for going over. I keep trying to narrow this down, but there's just a lot of content to cover in these meetings where we're trying to work on a 5-month timeline. So, very good. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for all your good work in January. Just really excited about this cohort. So, okay, thanks, everyone. We'll see you later. Bye.